today is a very good day because I got cruffins. And no, I'm not gonna eat 4 for myself. 1 is for me, obviously. 1 is for my wife, 1 is for my kid. And because I'm a good boss, 1 is for Matt. Matt, you want a delicious cruffin?
Got one.
Okay, all right, that's really weird. Well, more for me, I guess. If you're looking for a camera right now, it might be a little bit confusing. Not only are there so many different camera companies, but you also have to think about full frame versus APS-C versus micro four thirds sensors. There's just a lot going on. Or even now you might be like, what are you talking about? What's the different APS? What are you saying? Well, there's actually quite a big difference in between the different sensor sizes, just like there's a big difference between the cinnamon cruffin and the Nutella cruffin. I prefer the cinnamon, my wife likes the Nutella. I'm not gonna eat this right now because I know if I eat this while filming, I won't enjoy it at all. I'll just be too focused on filming, so that will be my prize at the end of the day for finishing up this video. There's actually quite a big difference between full frame and APS-C and micro four thirds, and that's largely or because they're actually different sizes, physically different sizes. So I have a little cheat sheet here. Full frame is about 36 millimeters by 24 mil, so that's like, I don't know, use a ruler or something. And then an APS-C is about 22 mil by 15 mil, and then a micro four thirds is 17 mil by 13 mil. So they're physically actually different sizes, and what this means is that the pixels or the photo sites are gonna be different sizes also. And this affects what the camera can do in a pretty big way. Let me explain, but did you guys enjoy the thumbnail? I went pretty hard on that one. Who saw the water bottle I left in there? Because, you know, they were leaving coffee cups and water bottles in the frame of the shots. How does that even happen? First up, probably the biggest difference that you'll notice right away is crop factor. So this is a full frame Sony camera, and this is a APS-C size sensor, Canon EOS M5. And so when you put, let's say, a 50 millimeter on a full frame camera, it's a 50 millimeter. But when you take that 50 millimeter and you put it on an APS-C size camera, then that 50 millimeter is now an 80 millimeter. So it's 1.6 times cropped. And then if you put that same 50 millimeter on a micro four thirds camera, if you could in theory put it on all the cameras, it would now be a 100 millimeter. So that would be like a pretty decent zoom lens already. So full frame is full frame, APS-C is 1.6 crop, and then micro four thirds is 2 times crop. And that's a pretty drastic difference. So right now I'm at 16 mil on this lens. If this was an APS-C size sensor, this is a full frame right now. If it was APS-C, it would look like this. It would be more like a 25 millimeter instead of a 16 millimeter. And then if this camera was a micro four thirds camera, it would look like this, which is more like a 32 millimeter. So there's a pretty big difference between the different sensors. And it's not necessarily a good or bad thing with the crop, because let's say, for example, you're a nature photographer and you need some really crazy zooms to get that bird or that sports photography or whatever, or videography. You want more of a crop so you can get closer. So sometimes a crop can actually be good. Full frame isn't always necessarily the best, but it is gonna be a lot harder to get those really wide shots with a micro four thirds camera versus a full frame. Another big difference is depth of field. So with full frame cameras, you're gonna get a lot more shallow depth of field, which means you're gonna get more of this kind of background blur. Whereas with the APS-C, you're gonna get a little bit less, and micro four thirds, you're gonna get a little bit less again. So if you put the exact same lens, let's say a 35 mil f1.4 on a full frame on an APS-C and on a micro four thirds camera, you're gonna get the most shallow depth of field on the full frame camera, which for me is a pretty big deal. And then we can talk about dynamic range. Now, because the sensor is bigger on a full frame, each of those pixels or photo sites that's taking in the light is a little bit bigger and therefore a little bit better or efficient. I don't know what the right word would be, but that means you're gonna get more dynamic range on a full frame camera. Again, Dynamic range is really important to me, so it does make a big difference which sensor you choose. And that same difference in photo sight sizes also affects low light performance. So you're gonna get better low light performance on full frame cameras. They're gonna be a lot better at high ISOs. You're gonna get less noise, and it's gonna be a cleaner image on a full frame camera versus a micro four thirds camera. That's why, for example, the GH5, it's a great camera, but it doesn't do that good in low light versus like the Sonys, which are full frame, they're crazy good in low light. With respect to autofocus in photos, again, kind of the same thing. Full frame is gonna be the fastest option for autofocus because of these same factors, the photo sights, the sensor size, all of that stuff. And then there's the size difference. You can see, even though the Sony is a really small camera, this EOS M5 is even smaller because it's a crop sensor. So there's a big size difference between the different cameras. Full frame cameras are always going to be the biggest, then APS-C can be a little bit smaller, and micro four thirds can be even smaller than that. That is a downside of full frame cameras. They're typically going to be a little bit bigger, and not just the cameras, but also the lenses tend to be a lot bigger. Micro four thirds lenses or APS-C size lenses can be a lot smaller than the full frame lenses, so that is a downside to using something like a full frame camera. Not only that, but the full frame lenses are gonna cost you a lot more also. They cost thousands of dollars for the really good ones, so you're gonna have to spend a lot more money. You can't just buy a camera, you also need to buy lenses. So yeah, there's gonna be a little bit of a cost difference there, and that leads me to my next point. Full frame cameras are typically gonna be more expensive, so that's another downside to full frame cameras. You can get a really great micro four thirds camera for fairly cheap, affordable in comparison to the full frame cameras in most cases. So cost is definitely a big downside to full frame cameras. You're gonna have to spend a lot more on the camera and the lenses, which kind of sucks. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily a clear winner here. It's not kind of a right or wrong, but just a question of being different, I guess. If you want the best quality, you're gonna wanna go for full frame. I think full frame in general is the best quality, but it's not just the best quality that you're looking at when you're trying to buy a camera. There's a lot of different factors that you're looking at. Size, weight, lenses, cost. There's a whole bunch of different factors, not just which camera image looks the best in the end. I do personally like full frame cameras the most. I do think it is the best image. I like how cinematic it is, the depth of field, the dynamic range, all of those things. I do prefer full frame cameras. But again, there is no right answer, just like with all things when we're talking about cameras. So there you go. Next time, water balls everywhere. Next time you're looking for a camera, I would start with the sensor size first. Figure out which size you need and then look at the different camera companies because, yeah, there's a lot of options. Also, have you guys been listening to the Matti and Pete show? A lot of good feedback. I'm excited about it. It's really fun to do. I think we're gonna keep that going. And let us know, who should we have on as guests? Oh. We're gonna have some guests on there, at least every once in a while. Haven't rode this thing a lot lately because of my back. Need more practice. Matt, you got any more cruffins in that desk of yours?